Well, phew. We have another angel being that's going to be coming online with us. You are going to love her. She's really very new to the channel, to this work with, not new to the work, but new to our groups, really. And I've had the pleasure of working with Victoria Reynolds, the Elohim of Freedom, for the past year. And so she embodies the concept of fearless and free. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. She is a spiritual luminary, a story healer, oracle of freedom, and an embodied angel. Victoria was born into a polygamist cult in the mountains of Montana, where she faced a continual barrage of mental, emotional, physical, sexual, and spiritual trauma before running away from home as a teenager. Against all odds, she went on to become a very successful entrepreneur. In 2008, she experienced her midlife transition, resulting in a complete collapse of everything she had built, forcing her to reconstruct her life from the ground up. The economic collapse caused a holy shift. You heard it, holy shift, a complete shift in consciousness. It ignited her spiritual gifts and created an opening for her to become a walk-in. Victoria is following her soul's purpose of assisting the liberation of humanity from fear-based beliefs to creating a world of peace and prosperity for all. She lights the way through her books, programs, and teachings, and through interviewing other thought leaders on her Fearless and Free TV show. So guys, I am going to bring Victoria Reynolds up. Hello. Hi, Victoria.
Hey, Joan.
All right, I got to shut the door a little bit more. Victoria
the door is completely shut. I've stuffed pillows under it so I can't hear you, but we still have a little bit of an echo. So I'm going to try to ignore you in the other room and only pay attention to you on the camera.
Here's what we're going to do, Victoria. I'm going to take myself off in a minute when we turn it over to you, because I understand that your guides have some messages for us. Maybe you want to start by telling everyone a little bit about you, and then what messages people have, what message you do have.
That sounds lovely. I don't have the message yet. I've been told I'm going to be bringing a message in a little bit. As you know, I'm here at the Sedona Ascension with you, and I've been at that event all morning. I've popped back into the hotel room where you and I can meet. So this is really fun. All
right. So I want you to tell everyone how you woke up as a girl and then woke up again. Okay.
I am. I was just kind of prefacing. Okay. Why there's an echo in the room. So I grew up in this polygamist cult, as you mentioned. I was born there. I was in one of only 6 families. That was the only thing I knew from the time I was born until I left home as a teenager. I was very suicidal as a teenager and realized that I needed to either commit suicide or run away from home. So obviously I chose the latter. Growing up in that environment was not a safe place for girls. It was I call it patriarchy on steroids, because it's a belief system that still believes that women are the property of men, and that women can't even get into heaven unless they are married to a man who has at least 3 wives. So I was bombarded with that belief from the very, very beginning. And what's really interesting for me is that looking back in my life, I can see that I was very spiritually gifted even as a small child, because I had the ability to see things that the adults around me couldn't see with regard to spirituality. So I would go to church and then I would ask my parents questions that they couldn't answer. I would ask the leaders of my community questions they couldn't answer. And so they just told me that I needed to, that I was being tempted by the devil. That's why I was asking questions, not to ask questions, not to doubt, that that God had it all planned out and that things just are the way they were, and to never question anything. And so I was raised with this concept of blind faith from literally from the time I was born, to only believe what my elders were telling me, elders specifically meaning the men who ran the religion, and to not question any of it. But one of the things that I was always getting in trouble for is because I was always questioning, and I always wanted to know why, and I always wanted to know how, and I had my own ideas of what spirituality were for me. So, for example, I couldn't understand this belief my parents had that God had my life all planned out and that I had no choice in the direction of my life. I couldn't grasp where my own ability to make choices actually mattered in this lifetime, because I was told my choices were inconsequential because God already had it all planned out. So I had no concept of being able to create my own reality, although there was a part of me that always questioned that. Another one of the things I remember saying to my mom when I was little was that I said, Mommy, I feel like this is Earth school. Earth is a school where our souls just come here to learn and then we leave. And I remember her saying, well, that's just one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard. Where did you get that crazy idea from? And so I just knew to keep my ideas to myself because they were so different from what I was being raised with. And I was also always very spiritually inclined. I went to church because I wanted to. I wanted to learn about spirit. I wanted to learn about God. I wanted to learn about Jesus, who I now call Yeshua. I wanted to learn higher spiritual concepts, and they just couldn't teach them to me. And I also discovered I had a gift that they called what is the word I'm looking for? ESP. So I could actually see things that, like if you showed me a piece of paper and I could tell you what was on the other side of the paper, that freaked people out. They thought I was possessed by some demon. And then after I left home and I got involved in spirituality, everybody told me it was New Age and that was evil, and that I needed to stay away from spiritual concepts and self-help books and crystals, which I find funny because I got my crystals. Which of course we know is simply not true. All of that, those are just fear-based beliefs created by religion to keep us from tapping in and tuning in directly to source. So one of the things I discovered after I had my, what I call my midlife reawakening, my midlife rebirth, my midlife holy shift, as you mentioned, is that what was missing from my life was my connection to spirit. And I discovered then, as I started communicating with my higher self, who now I'll explain to you about Victoria. At the time I went by the name Margaret. That is my personality self-name. It's the name my parents gave me. And at that time I started to understand that what was missing from my life was my connection to spirit that had been replaced by marriage and raising children. And so I started getting back in touch with myself. Got involved with my spiritual community again that had saved my life literally in my early 20s, and started reconnecting again. And what I started to realize is that the religion of my childhood had actually blocked my connection to God, to source, to the divine. And I started to realize that is the case with most of our religious beliefs. Our religiosity is a better word for that, is that they are fear-based beliefs disguised as love. And I started really understanding how all of these beliefs in our religiosities actually block us from directly connecting to the divine that is within every single one of us, to the Holy Trinity, which is the Mother, the Father, and the Divine Child. So even our religiosities took the Divine Mother out of the Trinity and named it an unnamed face of the Spirit of God. That is the Divine Mother that exists in all things. And so part of my role is to also restore her to her place alongside the Divine Masculine, so that we begin to understand that we are all aspects of both the Mother and the Father and the Child. We are all that. And that our religiosities have prevented us from really understanding and accessing our divine connection to the divinity that is within every single one of us, as, you know, streams of consciousness, of the divine consciousness having a human experience. And so for me, what I know is that my role on the planet is to teach people how to move out of fear-based beliefs and into love-based truths, and to really begin recognizing where everywhere in our lives fear is playing a role, because we've been living in a fear-based reality for thousands of years. My understanding is it got pretty rooted here approximately 11,000 years ago. It started about 12,500 years ago and really anchored in about 11,000 years ago. And that's what the story of the Garden of Eden is all about. It's when fear basically came in and started running the show on our planet. And we're attempting now to return back to the garden. And I call it Gaia's garden, the garden of love, the garden of the Divine Mother. And that is where we all come back and come home to the true essence of who we are. And as we recognize our fear-based beliefs, we can then start transmuting them with love-based truths. And all truths, the whole truth, is always based in love. So if there are any beliefs that are surrounding you that sound like, if there's an if attached to them, if there's a condition attached to them, they are based in fear. It's a really, really simple way of being able to recognize fear-based beliefs, because they do disguise them themselves really, really well. We see them all over our religiosities. If you love me, then you'll do this. If you love your family, for example, just the one word that's floating around in the world right now. If you love your family, you'll take the jab to the arm, that kind of thing. And so they're really easy to recognize if you know how to look for them. If there is a condition attached to the belief, it means that it's based in fear, because love is always 100% of the time, it is pure and it is unconditional. And how many of us were raised with the belief that God's love is unconditional, and then there's a whole big long list of conditions attached to it? Those are all fear-based beliefs. The truth is that love, the pure love of Source, has no conditions attached to it. It is pure love, it is purely given, and it is unconditional for every single being on the planet at all times. We just need to accept that within ourselves. And the issue is that we've placed so many conditions on ourselves that we only know how to love ourselves, and we only know how to love others in that same way. So as Yeshua, the Christed One, once said, love each other as I, the Creator, has loved you, and love each other as you love yourselves. The greatest issue on our planet is that we are loving each other the only way we know how, with the list of conditions we were told that God loves us, and the list of conditions we've placed on ourselves. So when we live our lives with those fear-based beliefs and all the conditions that we've placed around ourselves, and the conditions we believe God has placed upon us, that is the only way we know how to love others. So it's really, really important that we do the work to recognize every belief that we are holding within ourselves that has any kind of a condition attached to it, recognize that it's a fear-based belief, and begin overwriting it with love-based truth. The truth is always loving 100% of the time. And I know that's really difficult for a lot of people to understand when they look around at what's happening on the planet with those who are working on behalf of the dark contrast, if you will. I prefer not to use good versus evil, right, wrong, duality, reality. That's all of that, us versus them, is part of the old world that we are moving out of. The world that we are creating, this new earth that we are creating, is 100% loving. My understanding is that when this world is finished creating, fear will not even exist on this planet. It will be something that will be a bygone, and humanity will look back and say, wow, I can't believe human beings ever hurt each other. I can't believe human beings ever believed that there was a lack or that we needed to take from someone else in order for us to get. I can't believe human beings ever had this crazy thing called competition. That's all old world. That is the world we're moving away from. That is the world that was created by the contrast to keep us in fear and control and divided against each other. That is what we're moving away from. And in order to move into this new reality, this new earth, this heaven on earth, this 5D love-based reality, pick a label that works for you. In order to move into that reality, we need to be willing to question everything we have ever believed about everything. Every belief we've ever held about who we think we are, every belief we've ever held about our religiosities and our religious beliefs, every belief we've ever held about our spiritual nature, every belief we've ever held about our history, every belief we've ever held about everything. We need to be willing to question all of it. We need to be willing to decipher it. We need to be willing to look at it and see if it's based in fear, or if it is truly, genuinely, purely based in divine, absolute, unconditional love. Because if it isn't based in that, it is not true. It's that I'm being reminded of that term, that fear is what is the word? An acronym for false evidence appearing real. It really is that. It is not real. Fear is a false narrative that was created to keep us from our connection to the divine. Now, I use a different acronym for fear. I use face everything and rise, because when we face fear and we rise above it, it actually ceases to exist, because it cannot exist in the presence of love. Just as darkness cannot exist in the presence of light, there's no such thing as a dark switch. You walk into a room, you turn on the light, and the darkness is gone. When you walk into fear and you face it with pure love, fear cannot exist. It is powerless in our presence. We just need to find that within ourselves. And that's what it is to really tune in, to be in attunement. And that's really what the Christed one, what Yeshua, the one we call Jesus Christ, meant. That's what was really meant when they say that he atoned for our sins. It wasn't about atonement. It was about teaching us what attunement looks like. Even on the cross, he was teaching people to forgiveness. Forgive others for not knowing what they don't know and not knowing what they didn't know. That's what attunement looks like, to always be in perfect, absolute attunement with the Holy Mother and the Holy Father, the Holy Trinity, which is in every single one of us. The Holy Mother, the Holy Child, and the Holy Father are all of us embodied. Now, maybe not to the full extent that Yeshua was embodied as an example of what the human experience is capable of. Ultimately, we are all capable of what he was capable of, and that he was an example of what is possible for all of us when we live our lives from pure, absolute, divine love in all things. So ultimately, that's what I'm here to teach. I've been asked by Yeshua about 10 years ago to teach what he taught. Not what religion says he taught, but what he actually taught. And so he is my master teacher. He is the master teacher for planet Earth. And he teaches me what he really meant when he said what he said, and what he really meant when he traveled the earth, and what he really meant when he was communicating with the Divine Mother and the Divine Father as the Holy Trinity through him. Now, who is Victoria? So I was born, as I mentioned, as Margaret. That was the name my parents gave me. That was the name that was chosen for me when I incarnated at birth. And in 2012, actually in 2010, I began communicating with my higher self. Margaret began communicating with my higher self, who is Victoria. The higher self, my higher self, is Victoria, the Elohim of freedom. I am the Elohim of freedom, embodied in this body at this time, to help liberate humanity from the fear-based reality and create heaven on earth. Obviously, I'm not doing this by myself. There are hundreds of millions of us across the planet. There are starseeds, there are Elohim, there are angels, there are all kinds of angelic beings incarnated at this time to help liberate humanity from this enslavement matrix, fear-based reality that humanity and the planet have been living in for many thousands of years. And I am here now, along with all of my angelic realm, all of my brothers and sisters, to help create this new earth that is based entirely, solely, and wholly in divine love. That we get to the point that there isn't anything but that, where there is no war, there is no rumor of war, there is no desire to cause harm, there is no desire to take from another, there is no competition. There is only love, mutual support, and the love of spirit through every single one of us. That is what we are creating. And I know that's really difficult for a lot of people to imagine as you look around and all you see is all this suffering around you and all the harm that's being propagated on the bodies of humanity and all life on earth, the planet herself. Know that all of that is going away. Because the truth is that love always wins and light always wins. And we are moving on to the light side of the galaxy where this cannot, the agenda that the dark side, the dark contrast is attempting to propagate on humanity will not succeed. They can try as hard as they want. They can tell us what they want us to vision for them. It won't work. There are too many of us that know what's really going on in the world. And that number is growing exponentially every single day. Humanity is setting itself free. Every single person on the planet is the one they've been waiting for. And it's time for all of us to lock arms. You know, it's different than the old saying of, the army of light. Well, that's different. In this battle, there are no weapons other than the sword of truth and the armor of love. And we all lock arms, right? Arm in arm. That's what we're doing all across the planet. No weapons of any kind need to be lifted. What needs to be lifted are our hearts up into the heavens. We need to be singing. We need to be dancing. We need to be rejoicing. We need to be loving. The more we focus on the world we want to create, the faster that world will be created, because our vision creates reality. Every choice we make creates reality. Every thought we have creates reality. Every vision we have creates reality. This is why it's so important to stop focusing on what they want us to focus on and focus on the truth that we get to create a new world. We're creating it right now from the ground up. And here's the wonderful thing, the extraordinary thing. We wouldn't even be able to imagine it if it didn't already exist. In the imaginal realm, in the field of creation, the new earth we want to create already exists. It's simply up to us to make it physically manifest. And we do that through our words, through our choices, through our thoughts, through our conversations, and through our visions. This is where our power lies. This is where we are created in the image of God. We are all creators. We are all divine love. We are all Mother, Father, Creator working through every single one of us. We are all the divine intervention we seek. We are all that. We're all aspects of the great I Am, surging through every single one of us. You know the saying, with God all things are possible, and this is true. God flows through every single one of us. That is the divine love that is in every one of us. Divine love through us makes all things possible. It's us. Too many people are waiting around for a leader. They're waiting for a president or a prophet or a minister or Jesus to set us free from this reality we've been living in. The truth is, it is in every one of us. Every single one of us has been touched with the Christ consciousness. The second coming of Christ is in every one of us. And it's time for each of us to stand up and recognize that within ourselves. None of us are separate from Source, and none of us are separate from each other. We are all the Mother, the Father, and the child embodied as all of us. Now, we are obviously not all God. I am not God, and neither are you, but we are all aspects of all that. And the divine through us creates the world we envision. One of my frustrations is how much time so many of you are putting on what's wrong with the world. I see it on the Telegram channels. I see it on the YouTube channels. I see it on the Facebook. All the focus on this is what the dark side has planned. Don't for a moment, for not one single moment, put any energy into that. Simply by repeating those stories and sitting around and complaining about them, you are energizing them. By spewing any hate at all to those who are propagating the dark side, you are actually feeding it. It feeds on anger. It feeds on fear. It feeds on your conversations. So yes, recognize it. Don't for one moment energize it, because your energizing it is part of what's creating it into existence. So you can look at it and say, I see what the dark side has planned here, and this will not exist in my reality. You get to choose whether that is your reality or not. And if enough of us say, I see what you have planned here, and in my reality this does not exist, it will not exist. Now, this is different than sticking your head in the sand and pretending, or putting the blinders on your eyes and being ignorant of what the dark side has planned. It's not that. It is important to recognize what they have planned, because our job is to dismantle it. Our job is to diffuse it. Our job is to dispel it. Our job is to transmute it. So to understand what they have planned is important. Otherwise, that puts you in a place of ignorance, like everyone else out there who has no idea what's going on the planet. So it's important to know about it. However, not energizing it, not complaining about it, not putting any ounce of a vision into it whatsoever. You can simply say that might be what your plans are, but I reject it and substitute it with my own reality. I reject that reality and substitute my own. In my reality, we are moving to heaven on earth. In my reality, we're moving into 5D, unconditional love, pure loving reality, where there is no competition and there is no suffering. There is nothing but freedom of the spirit and freedom of the human vessel to create miracles for themselves and for each other. That's what is possible for us when we move out of fear and understand what we are truly capable as divine love embodied in each one of us. This is an avatar. This is just a physical vessel that divine love works with and moves through. And we can reject everything else. The more of us who choose to reject that reality and substitute our own, the faster we will create the reality we seek. Now, if you're wondering about Victoria, how that happened, that is a question people ask. So in 2011, my personality self, who was then Margaret, was connected with her higher self, who is me, Victoria. And over the years, I began to embody into this body and take over the personality self. As I was teaching her how to remedy her own suffering, remedy the stories from her past, remedy the childhood traumas, remedy the fear-based beliefs. So over the years, Margaret started teaching my Victoria's messages back in 2011. And I have since fully embodied in this body as Victoria Elohim of Freedom. Margaret has a spot on the bus, a little special spot in my heart for my children. And I'm now fully embodied in form. And I'm here wholly and solely on behalf of the freedom of humanity, specifically the spiritual freedom of humanity. And the reason for that is that all freedoms are ultimately spiritual freedoms. And that's something I teach about as well, that whatever the freedom is that you desire, whether it is physical freedom, emotional freedom, mental freedom, financial freedom, all freedoms are ultimately spiritual freedoms, because we are all spirit having a human experience. And once we understand that everything is a spiritual experience, that is when you can begin to see how easy it is to transmute and transform the darkness into light, and transmute and transform all fear into love. Because there really is nothing other than love and light. That fear is merely I don't want to say a lack of, because I don't believe in lack, but it is the lowest vibration of love. Fear is the belief that there is a lack of love, but there really is no such thing as a lack of love. It is all things. It is everywhere present. It is all that is. It is what all things are made of. It's impossible to disconnect ourselves from it, because it is everywhere present. It flows through our veins. It flows in the sand and the grass beneath our feet. It flows through the air. It's what we're made of. It's the glue that binds all things together. We only think we're separate from love because we've been taught that we are, and the truth is that's impossible to be separate from it. And darkness is merely the absence of light. And the darkness exists for a purpose. The reason the darkness we're experiencing exists is so that we can find our own light within it. We wouldn't be able to see our light if the contrast didn't exist. So what's happening on the planet right now is the darkness is being exposed. We're seeing it real and present right here in our moment, so that we wake up. It exists specifically so that we can wake up to our light. So when people ask, why is it that God is allowing all this darkness to happen? It's because the darkness is allowed to exist so that we can find the light. That is ultimately what we came here to experience as souls. We chose to experience the contrast. We wanted to see if we could find our light in the darkness, and we wanted to see if we could find our love within the presence of fear. And as we do, as each one of us do, the earth will be forever changed, because when enough of us find our light and enough of us find our love, the fear and the darkness will be transmuted into the nothingness from whence it came. Because they only exist as a mechanism for our own soul's learning. And once we learn through that, this planet becomes a place of peace. I was shown years ago that this planet is a learning planet until we as a collective of souls determine for it to be a place of peace. That is what we are creating. That is what New Earth, Heaven on Earth, 5D, love-based reality, again, whatever term you choose, is all about turning this planet into a planet of peace, of heaven on earth, of peace on earth, as a respite for the souls of humanity and a respite for others across the galaxy who will be coming here on vacation. I know that's really difficult to imagine right now because of what we see attempting to play out in this world. Remember, it's not playing out, it's just attempting to. And the resonance that we hold within ourselves will determine how long it takes to become New Earth. That is a question people ask me all the time. How long is this going to take? And the answer is, it's up to you. It's up to every single one of us how long it takes. The longer we hold any aspect of our existence in resentment, the longer it takes for heaven on earth to manifest. The longer it takes for us to hold any aspect of ourselves in any aspect of our individual and collective story in resentment, the longer it will take for heaven on earth to manifest. Ultimately, all of this is about each and every one of us doing the work to find the fear-based beliefs within ourselves, do the shadow work of recognizing any darkness that exists within ourselves, and do the work to find pure, divine, absolute love within ourselves in all things. When we do, that is when we get to experience heaven on earth, because heaven on earth is within ourselves. And when enough of us create it within ourselves, it will physically manifest for the whole. That, for those of you who have been asking how we create heaven on earth, is how we do it. No one is going to bring it to us. It's inside every single one of us to create it within ourselves. That is what Yeshua meant when he said that heaven is at hand. It's right here. It's in our hands. It's within every single one of us. We just have to get over ourselves. We have to get over our fear. We have to get over our doubt. We have to get over our dissension. We have to get over our blame. We have to get over resentment. We have to get over every single one of those. All of those are based, their beliefs, they're based in fear. When we get over ourselves and come home to the truth that we are all divine love having a human experience, and remember that. I use the word remember a little bit differently. It means to remember that. Remember that we were all born as divine love embodied. And as we move through life, we dismember aspects of ourselves we believe to be unworthy and not lovable. And this is about remembering every aspect of ourselves, bringing all those broken aspects into the whole of who we are, love up everything that we are, no longer holding any aspect of our lives or ourselves or anyone who's been present in our lives in any way, shape, or form in resentment at all to any of it. And that is possible when you do the inner work, and you do the work that requires bringing up all of those stories and thoughts and beliefs you might have shoved down and pretended didn't exist. You got to be willing to bring them up. That's the hard part. That is part of questioning everything you've ever believed. Everything you've ever believed about yourself, your belief systems, what we've been taught, our histories, everything needs to be brought up for questioning. Everything needs to be brought up. You take it out and you lay it across the table, the buffet of beliefs, and let's start taking a look at them. When you do, you'll begin to recognize which ones were based in fear, which ones were manipulations of the human spirit, which ones were created from connecting you to the divinity that's within yourself and the divine of all that is, the one, source, creator, creatress that is all things. Our religiosities were set themselves up as middlemen, and they're not necessary. Now, this isn't to say that your religion is bad or wrong. I'm just, because you are where you are, because your soul has you where you are. If your soul wanted you someplace else, you would be someplace else. It's that simple. Your soul put you into that family that you were born into. Your soul has you right now experiencing what it is you're experiencing because there's something you need to learn there. And your soul is desiring for you to rise above it into pure absolute love, where all things become possible. Every desire you have in your heart already exists. It's simply a matter of manifesting it through you. And trusting the divine love that is all things, and the one that created it all and holds it all together. When you're in that place of pure absolute trust and pure absolute knowing, your life becomes a walking miracle. And there isn't anything you can't do, because God through you makes all things possible. Now I'm feeling that there's a message that wants to come through me. I'm looking to see, Joan, how much time do I have? About 30 minutes. I'm looking at the little timer at the top.
Till about 1:55. So.
Okay. Till about 1:55. Probably should look at my clock and see what time it is. Okay, so I have about 20 minutes. Okay, so that's enough time for me to bring in a little message for all of you. Okay, so let's close our eyes and take a nice deep breath. And get anchored into that heart space, that loving heart center that exists within every single one of us. This is a heart-based reality we are creating. And so it is time, if you have not yet, to add the word heart into everything we do. Mind, body, heart, and spirit. In all things. And as we activate the heart, the consciousness of the heart in all things, that feeds into the reality we are creating. We are activating the divine heart within all of us. Invoking now the divine Father, the divine Mother, the divine child into the heart of each of us, now present on this show and in the future for all of you who are watching. Calling forward the Holy Father, the Holy Mother, the Holy Trinity, the Holy Child that is all of us. The Christed Child into every person's heart, knowing that each one of us is an embodiment of that Trinity. Asking now if there's a message that wants to move through me on behalf of all of humanity from this Holy Trinity to each of you. As one voice through me. Calling forward the divine truth of the Father, the wisdom and healing of the Mother, and the light-heartedness, the diamond light of the Christed child, asking for the message that wants to move through me now to each one of you. We want you to know, dear sweet child, that you have never been separate from us, that you have never been anything other than pure, absolute love. We see you now as the pure child that you are, the human child, the human creation is to us like that of a small child, a young child who is just learning to walk, just learning to speak, just learning to love, just learning how to play nicely on the playground with the other children. We see through each of you your infinite possibilities. We look at you the way any parent looks at their small child and sees, oh, what pure love you are, what you are purely capable of. We see what you can do when you finally grow up, and yet don't be in such a hurry to grow up. Because the heart of a child is that pure innocence, that lightheartedness, the laughter, the joy. That is what was meant for each one of you. Life was never meant to be hard. We were never meant to have hard work. You were never meant to suffer. It was never our will for any of you to suffer. That was a misbelief created by those who wish to hold you in fear. It has always been our will for you to experience joy and nothing but that. The suffering humanity is experiencing is because of the choices I've allowed you to make, we've allowed you to make. Every choice you make creates your reality. And you wanted to learn through the contrast, and therefore that is why you are learning through the contrast. The reason you're experiencing suffering is because of the choices you have made that lead to that suffering. We say to you now, make better choices. We say to you now that every choice must be made in conscious choice, no longer allowing your choices to be made by anyone around you, no longer allowing your choices to be made by default of something someone told you, no longer allowing your choices to be made in the default of fear because that's what you've always known. Now comes the time of conscious choice, and in conscious choice, that is where you will find us everywhere present. That is where you will create the reality you desire to create. That is where you will find us speaking to you about what's next and what's best. It is time now to get out of your minds and be in your hearts. Yes, you heard that. It is time to get out of your mind and be in your heart. Everything you do from this moment forward must stem from the love in your heart, the place where you connect to absolute, pure, unconditional, relentless love. Out of your mind and into your heart. Far too many of you are trying to overthink all of this. There is no thinking. There is only loving. There is only asking, how can I see this through the eyes of love? How can I choose this through the eyes of love? How can I do this through the eyes of love? And then you'll begin to see every experience in your lives the way we, the Holy Trinity, see all things. There is no judgment in any of it. There is only all of you experiencing what it is to experience your reality. And now as you wake up to recognize how fear has played a role in your reality, you begin to create what so many of you have desired for so long. Like a child that's waiting for Christmas for those favorite toys you've been waiting for heaven on earth. And we say to you now that it is coming. It is coming because it is the desire of your heart. And each of you are stepping up and stepping into the roles that are necessary to make that happen. That heart light is being activated within every single one of you. And once that light is awakened in you, it cannot be shut down. It is the light-heartedness of the Christed child for you. It is the infinite love and healing of the Divine Mother through you. It is the guidance and the direction of the Divine Father through you. It is always there, always present within every single one of you. You need to only let go of your mental concepts of how you believe things need to be and move into your heart space and trust. Trust in yourselves, trust in each other, and trust in divine timing, and trust in the divine love that creates all things, that is all things, that knows all things. Trust in that. And the reality you seek to create will manifest in an instant. Because when you are all living in that, the reality that is attempting to play out in your world cannot exist. Because it cannot exist in your presence. You are all the ones you've been waiting for. You are all me, the divinity, working through each of you. You ask for divine intervention, and that is you. It is time now to stop saying what's in it for me, and let your words always speak what is in it for we. The oneness of humanity, the oneness in love, the oneness in divine spirit, the one creator through each of you. None of you have ever been separate from us, from divine, except that your beliefs have told you so. It is time now to let go of all of those beliefs that have any of you in division and separation, understanding that all of those were created in fear. Because those who work on behalf of the dark are terrified of you remembering who you are. And they are terrified only because they have forgotten their own divinity. They have forgotten that they too are all aspects of divine love embodied as them. And someday they will also find their way home to me. Just as you have now. That is all for now. Our dear sweet children, remember to be like a child in all things, in the awe and the wonder and the lightheartedness in all things. And in that you will set yourselves free. In that your spirit will be free to play, and you will feel the joy that you are all meant to experience. That is my will. And my will be done on heaven as it is on earth. It is so, and so it is, and so it shall always be, and it is so. Well, that was a message for all of you today from Source, from the Holy Trinity. So for those of you who have had issues with the Holy Trinity and wondering what it is, that my understanding from what I've been told is that Yeshua was the greatest example of what the Trinity looks like in human form. We all have that ability within ourselves, and that the Creator Creatress wanted to show each of us what was capable, which is why it chose to step into the human form of Yeshua, the one we know as Jesus Christ, so that we could all see what we are capable of. And he is the greatest example of that, of how our lives can look when we go through life engaging in nothing other than pure love. When we love ourselves the way Source Creator loves us, when we love each other that way, that is how we create the reality we all desire to seek, and that is how we set ourselves free. There isn't anything other than that. And I have a couple of minutes. Joan, do you have any questions for me before we finish up? No, you have yourself muted. Okay, I can
now
hear
you can
you in the other room.
I'm unmuted now. Okay, I'm going to turn the sound and whisper. Okay, Victoria, why don't you tell us a little bit about like this changing of your name, you know, like not changing, but this transformation of your name into the Elohim of freedom that's actually just happened the last few weeks.
Oh,
like that you
okay.
fully embraced it.
Yes. So as I was saying earlier, my personality self discovered in 2010 that her higher self was Victoria Elohim of freedom. So in 2012, I started saying that I wanted to embody. What I was explaining to the personality self is that I need to have boots on the ground. The reason there are many of us who are from the angelic realm, ascended masters, benevolent ETs that are here right now in physical form is because we needed to have boots on the ground. There's a lot of things we can do in the spiritual realm. There are things that we also need to do physically here. And so we have chosen to embody in human form. It's kind of like, it's like wearing an avatar. It's like, you know, we're angels in disguise. And so what I was explaining to my personality self back in 2012 is that I wanted to fully embody. Now my personality self was very resistant because I knew that meant letting go of a lot of the things in my life. At the time, that also meant leaving my human partner, I call my husband. And then in 2018, it made very clear that I needed to fully embody. And so I fully embodied on September 6th, 2018. And I went to the man I was married to and I said, things are going to be very different now. There are things I'm not going to put up with. I'm not going to tolerate living with an alcoholic. He was an alcoholic. Lovely, lovely, lovely human being. He's still one of my very dearest friends, and I will always have a place in my heart for him. There were things I was simply no longer willing to tolerate and that I needed to set myself free from in order for me to be all that I'm here to be. And I was in an environment where I was keeping myself small and living in this three-dimensional environment he had created for me to live in. I needed to set myself free from that. So I have since become divorced. That divorce was final a few months ago. And I came to the realization a couple of months ago that I needed to tell the world who I am, that the world is finally ready to know who I am. I am Victoria Elohim of freedom embodied in this body. There is only one Victoria Elohim of freedom. If you Google her, you will find, you'll probably find my website, but you'll also find a couple of other places where people are channeling the Victoria Elohim of freedom, and you'll find out more about who I am as one of the 7 teams of Elohim, one of the original creators of planet. I am guardian of freedom of choice, which is why I speak so much about the importance of conscious choice. I was shown a couple of months ago, about a year ago, that conscious choice is now going to be the new prime directive because those who work on behalf of the dark side have figured out a loophole where they created manipulated choice, unconscious choice. And so now we're moving into a place where humanity is moving into conscious choice. So every choice we make has to be conscious. So I did come out of the spiritual closet 100%, started telling people about my walk-in experience, how I embodied, why I've embodied, why I'm here. It took me that long to do that because my personality self was afraid. There was that one last final fear. There was a big hump I needed to get over because there are a lot of us, and I know there are some of you watching who are still hiding out in the spiritual closet. And I know what that feels like. And I want you to know, for most of you, it is safe to come out of the spiritual closet. I do know there are some angelic beings here who have decided it's not time yet for them to come out. For me, it felt like it was time for me to come out of the closet and really start speaking to humanity about who they really are and what they're really capable of, and how we move into this love-based, completely free experience that we're moving into. So, Joan, does that answer your question?
Yes, that completely answered my question, love. We have about 2 minutes. So what do you do with people? How can they find you, and how can you help them? Like, what do you do?
You can find me at victoriareynolds.com. I made that as easy as possible for people. What I help with, I have several things. I have several classes on my website that you can take. The Transcendence class is specifically for what I call spiritual newbies. So if you are newly awakened and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know what's next, the Transcendence process class will help you with recognizing the fear-based beliefs and transcending the fear-based reality. That's the process I gave to my personality self when she first started having the spiritual awakening. I first started having spiritual awakening after the 2008 recession. It's the process that I use to help other people find and recognize and work through their shadows and fear-based beliefs. I have a free book on my website. Right now, it is Rise Up. It's a simplified guide to what's happening on the planet right now. So if you're brand new waking up, you will love that book. Just one little quick clarification. There is a bug with my website right now. So if you go to my website and try to download the free book, it probably won't work. So just send me an email that says, hey, it didn't work. Can I get my free book? And I will email it to you. There's a little glitch that my team is working on right now.
It's going to be all fixed soon.
It is going to be all my designer. Fantastic. Joan hooked me up with somebody that's going to take my website to a whole nother level. There's actually going to be a membership site there as well for people who choose to be part of the private membership. I do personal sessions. So if you have issues you want to work through, I do what I call issue resolution. And I have several other types of sessions there. If you look at the sessions page, if you go to shop and look at the very bottom, you'll see spiritual sessions. You'll see the kind of sessions that I do. I do one-on-one as well as classroom work. I have something called 6D Money Tree. That's about growing prosperity in the 6th dimension. That's actually where, as I said, this new earth that's created already exists. That is where things already exist. It's just a matter of learning how to physically create them so you can learn how to work the 6th dimension as well. And I think that's it. And then my YouTube channel is on Fearless and Free TV on YouTube. I do a lot of spiritual teaching there. I have something called Spirit Lift Sunday, and I interview really, really interesting guests. So you can find me there as well.
Amazing, Victoria. It is just wonderful. I'm standing here in the corner so we don't echo out. I just want everyone to know that working with Victoria, having Victoria, listening to her, she's always wise. She seems to have a direct connection to Source, to the teachings of Jesus, to inner workings, and always a surprise to hear like the philosophy that comes through you and the wisdom, love. So I'm so glad you joined us. I'm so glad to know the Elohim of freedom.
Thank you so much for inviting me to be here.
We will see you next time. All right. Okay, I can turn the sound up now. Let's see. I'm not echoing. She was wonderful. Something I didn't tell you about Victoria is that she had told me that not that she told me, my guides told me that she really was one who interprets the teachings of Jesus And she does it effortlessly. It's quite phenomenal.